Is being a filmmaker an artist, or I know you said it's kind of two worlds?
Well, I think it's really interesting in today's world. Like, yeah, I think all filmmakers are artists, but I think it's also what's amazing about film is it's so technology driven that you also have to be a technician and you have to understand the format, understand the medium, and understand the complexities of all the layers of making a movie. It's kind of, it's only been around 100 years, and it's the synthesis of photography and painting and novel writing and sound and music. So that's why I've always been attracted to it. It's kind of taking everything I'm attracted to and I love and being able to like jumble it all together and find a certain type of balance between all these art forms. So I think a filmmaker is definitely an artist, but you're also a businessman, you're also a technician, you're also an audience member. You have to play all these parts along the way. And I think a fear, it's something that I got caught in for a long time. And it almost came with making a movie and trying and failing and trying and failing, was being like, I just have an artistic vision. I have to stick to my artistic vision and all that. But it's not just about you. It's about just 100, even on a small film, there's 40 people that go into making the movie. So I think it's about also knowing that there's a lot of opinions and a lot of other people that a film is bigger than you as an artist when you start making it. It takes a lot on a life of its own again. And so I think you need to find a balance as a filmmaker, not only as an artist, but also as a technician. Also, when you're lucky enough to be the director, someone who also can guide all the other departments and listen to the other departments because they and to the department heads and all your other crew members and everyone, because they also have opinions and they're also personally invested in your film. So I think in a way, a film is a collection of artists, even if they don't mean to be coming together to create this story and bring it to life.
And you also said to be an attorney that you didn't. Can you just touch on that? Just when did you discover that?
Oh, I mean, filmmaking and contracts, like trying to get your film made and having to make a deal with contracts seem to go hand in hand, right? Like you have to, at all times, everyone's trying to protect themselves. You're dealing with any amount of money is still money, and you have to protect the person who's giving you the money. You have to protect the film from the money. You have to make sure that everything's reasonable. So and lawyers are very expensive. So it's a cost that at a point you have to take on a little bit of extra effort to learn the business of films and the law and what you can and can't do and understand what you're getting yourself into. Because in the end, every film is also a company. It's a little limited liability corporation, an LLC, each one. So you have to know that there's other factors involved that just go beyond like, I have a story to tell. Right. It's business as well. And it's not something, it's not gonna become a millionaire overnight, but you still have investments, you still have actors they have to be protected, and you have to make, they're putting themselves out there, so they have clauses in their contracts, and you have to understand their clauses so that you also don't infringe upon them when you're filming. So yeah, I think, and then every step of the way, when you're raising the money, making the deals with actors, closing the deals with your department heads, distributing the movie, you're dealing with contracts in every single facet. And if your film's big enough and you're the director, I'm sure you don't have to deal with them. But on these small budget films, which I've been able to do and I love doing, you have to take a little extra interest into the legal side of it. So yeah, I mean, we've all read and heard the horror stories of people getting sued, people losing the rights to their film. It just happened to Terry Gilliam last year on the Don Quixote film. He lost the rights to the movie to a producer because they didn't realize there was a loophole in the contract, and that was his baby. He actually, I believe, had a heart attack from it when it first happened.
Oh my goodness!
So, and that's a big film. So, the thing on these little films, it's hard. It's a crazy business.
Where do you think story is going? We talked a little bit earlier about, this sort of crazy political world that we're in. But where do you think story is going in future years? I mean, for Gen Xers like me, we weren't thinking about like really facial recognition and things that, you know, are very real things that are going to be happening. They're already happening. That, you know, what if somebody's face is on a now a database and they're wrongly accused and now their life's totally changed. So, but those weren't things we were totally thinking about. Maybe just they dabbled in some sci-fi.
Well, I think there's a lot of, I mean, one of the beautiful things I find about film is the way that film has continually prophesized the future in sci-fi, in mystery, in noir, in all these facets. But I think right now, I guess in story, what I've been seeing is a really amazing reimagining of the structure of film and of storytelling. I think even in the last 6 months, I've started seeing movies being presented in a more commercial way that are actually pretty advanced story-wise. A lot of Chinese cinema is really pushing storytelling structurally, and there's this film Long Day's Journey into Night, which was really pushed the idea of how to tell a story, I think, in a whole new way. And I think if we get into how it's affecting, I mean, right now in film, we're entering almost like a no man's zone of what's next, right? Like, it goes back to what you're saying about AI, facial recognition, but people were dealing with that from the 50s. You know, they were looking at the possibilities of the future. 2001: A Space Odyssey was dealing with AI. You know, so we've always looked to film to help us understand the future. And I think anybody who makes a film has to be a little bit of a futurist, because your film's coming out at least a year later, if not 2 to 3 years after you've made it. So you're always having to look to the future a little bit in each movie. But I think storytelling, I think film itself is a very rudimentary language that's still in its like primitive stage. And I think what we're starting to see now is people exploring it in all new ways than ever before, because a film doesn't just live in a movie theater for 90 minutes now. It lives on your phone, it lives in segments, it lives in music videos. Like, film is a whole new term, I think. But in the idea of how do I think that filmmakers are attacking or kind of taking on the idea of the future, I think in the same way they always have. They always looked, I think that's what I love about film. They've always looked to the future to help us as audiences understand what may come. And sadly, sometimes they're right. And that's the scary thing, right? Is like, there's a lot of films that are looking a lot more realistic than when they were made, you know? You even look at big, like, what was the Roland Emmerich movie about climate change he did in 2002, 2003.
Well, not an Inconvenient Truth.
Dennis Quaid. No, that was Al Gore. Yeah, no, Al Gore just was giving us a reality that no one listened to.
Right,
but
that's true.
Look at all these films that we're dealing with, you know, Mad Max, all these movies that we took as kind of these popcorn flicks, even though they were always better than that, are very much coming true right now. And I think they're going to come true a lot faster than anyone realized. And I think as filmmakers now, we're having to look at the reality that's next is a very scary one. And I think that's why you're seeing these films like Us, you know, these movies that are dark but resonating on a very large global scale. So, yeah. And
here Philip K. Dick was writing in his little hovel of a you know, I think he preferred to write like where it was real dirty and messy. And you know, a lot of what he wrote sort of was, unfortunately, has already sort of taken place, but, you know, and struggled, and I think had to go to a pet store to get his meat, you know, and that's where he...
Absolutely, and he was a pretty, you know, reclusive dude, Philip K. Dick, but look, A Scanner Darkly. I mean, we're not far from that. We're at a point where one of the biggest, there was an article that came out today that said the 3 biggest threats to humankind is climate change, nuclear war, and AI. And Philip K. Dick was dealing with AI in the 60s,
right?
As was Ray Bradbury, as was a lot of those early science fiction writers. And it's interesting because it wasn't just science fiction in the end, right? A lot of people taking on political movies. You know, you look at like Snowpiercer, which only came out a couple of years ago, which I just rewatched. And that doesn't seem as far away as it once did. You know, a world total where the climate outside is so sub-zero that they have to live on a train that's propelled by that small poor people.
Right. Yeah, and then Philip K. Dick, well, I wouldn't say he was persecuted by any means, but he definitely got some scrutiny from all sides, including the government. But he also was, you know, sort of in the 60s in Berkeley at a time it was very, you know, it was not, it was similar to, you know, well, I don't want to get too political.
Yeah, but I think on the other side of the spectrum, because I mostly labor too much in this political darkness. And there's also films is there for us to escape that as well.
Sure.
And I think we have to remember that there's two sides to filmmaking. It's not just to show us the harsh realities of today, but it's also for us to go get lost in another world and enjoy it and have fun living in that other world, you know? And that for me is a big part of it. A lot of days, you know, where I've been depressed or not felt, you know, necessarily up for it, I've gone at 3 p.m. to a movie and, you know, it's just, I've gotten to just disappear for a little while. And I really relish those moments. And even if it's a terrible film, it's still that dark room, that movie, you know, and it goes back to the whole experience of watching films, but that movie theater experience, you're just in your world and it's just you and sound and images and story. Nothing's better. So I really also, on the other hand, appreciate big budget films or big, not even just escapist cinemas. I don't think that's fair, but I think it's really nice for us to get to indulge our other side where we can enjoy another world for a little while besides our own.
Yeah, I'll go see a movie too sometimes in the afternoon, and even if it's like an art house, you know, theater, and I'm hoping that there's going to be people in theater. Not too many obnoxious people that are on phones and talking and stuff, but enough where I feel like, okay, I'm not the only one, and I'm gauging how they're reacting, because it's not fun otherwise.
No, the communal experience is awesome. I mean, and I guess we're talking about storytelling, but I think also in film, I think people are yearning for that communal experience. You know, I think you can have your Netflix, you can have your Amazon and everything, but people love going to the movie theaters together. And they love watching other people watch movies. Right.
That's the fun part, to see, do they laugh at the same part you do? Are they, you know, that's the beauty of it. So I like that as well.